What's up guys? So No Way Home has finally come out and I loved it, obviously. And now that this Homecoming trilogy is closed, y'all know what time it is. The college trilogy shall commence, and needless to say, people have been waiting for this, with complaints about the MCU constantly infantilizing MCU Peter Parker and not letting him grow up, which the main theme of Spider-Man is, in my opinion, growing up and dealing with life as it comes to you. Spider-Man is so popular because, much like all of us, he doesn't have it all together, and for the most part, he has to continuously figure things out through trial and error, perseverance, and sacrifice, which has been MCU Spider-Man so far, and that's what I just absolutely love about him. John Watts made it so Peter wasn't just some character by default. There's good reason why he is the way he is, and we were there to witness all that progression in the Homecoming trilogy, and that was amazing. Now with the new trilogy, I have some plans for those future Spider-Man movies, but there has also been talk of Spider-Man having another Disney Plus show besides the Spider-Man freshman year. So I'll not only lay out the new cast of characters for Peter to interact with, including the new villains, but also my ideal plan for the next 3 movies. You know, some motivations, story, some plot, not too in depth, just a general outline, and what could potentially be a season or 2 of a Disney Plus Spider-Man show. Likely new suits I'd like to see, must-have appearances in up-and-coming heroes films, fan casts of the supporting cast and villains, and of course my personal choices for the potential directors of this brand new trilogy. So we're gonna get into all that right now, but before we do, make sure to hit that sub button to support your boy, turn on your notifications, leave a thumbs up, follow my social medias. Guys, we hit all our sub goals last year of 300, 315, and 330, which again, thank you so much. We are starting off 2022 with about 332 subs, and the new goal for the end of this year is 500 subs, okay? I think it's definitely possible, and I'm gonna work my ass to the bone to make as much fun content as I can to hit that goal. So without further ado, let's get spectacular. So for the first and only Spider-Man 4, or potentially the spectacular Spider-Man Empire State. Yes, I know that's my working title. I know I'll throw myself into the polar bear pit, but that's what I got right now, guys. I just love the idea of Spectacular Spider-Man as a live action title. We'll see Peter Parker after the events of No Way Home entering his first year of college at Empire State University, and this is where, like how it happens for most people, life hits him hard. We'll see him actually deal with money struggles now, what with him being completely alone without May, having to pay rent for his shitty apartment, and paying for those expensive ass college textbooks. Yo, seriously guys, fuck college textbooks. Those bitches should come for free, and the fucking parking permit, okay? Anybody got the PDF? Anyways, and I'm thinking to supplement the income he gets from working as a freelance videographer slash photographer for the Daily Bugle, I would also like to see him maybe tutoring his fellow students, a way to earn some extra money and show his academic prowess. As well, I could 100% see Peter Parker as a Grubhub or DoorDasher. You know, that way we can bring back the classic motorbike as well. This is where the OG cast of characters will come through the same as in the comics. Peter met Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn in college, and so this will be the same idea. As for those castings, it might be a bit basic, but honestly, I think Timothée Chalamet would be a great choice. I feel like he has a kind of high status to him that could play a billionaire's son quite effortlessly. I think the chemistry between him and Tom would be great, and the second cast for Harry Osborn, in my opinion, Asa Butterfield would absolutely kill it as well. So those are my choices for that. As for the casting of Gwen Stacy, it could go 2 ways, but I think it's an important casting. This is a woman that left a deep impression on Peter Parker and the story of Spider-Man, so I thought about this a lot. So I'll go with my second choice first, which is Anna Joy Taylor. Yes, another very prevalent cast, but she's talented as hell and looks very similar already to Gwen. There's also been a rumor that Sony's looking to cast her as Black Cat, which I don't mind at all, although I have another casting for that, and I'll mention that a bit later on in the video. But my next and first cast for Miss Stacy is an actress that I honestly wouldn't mind seeing as also the MCU's Jean Grey, but it is none other than Thomasin McKenzie. If you've seen Jojo Rabbit or Last Night in Soho, you know what I'm talking about. I think she's an incredible actress and looks the part, so that's my cast for Gwen Stacy. Maybe even bring flashback to match the crew exactly, and because of the events of No Way Home, this will cause Peter, much like in the comics, to be a recluse and come off as a bit of a jerk, but slowly the relationships will build because Peter is lonely and obviously wants to be happy again, and this will also cause more tension when he has to dip to save the day and has to make up very weak excuses and really piss a lot of this group off. Also, Kurt Connors will be introduced as one of Peter's professors, and so the relationship with him and Peter grows throughout this trilogy and makes his eventual transformation into the Lizard that much harder for Peter to contend with, but that won't come just yet for this 4th installment. We just got a version of the Lizard in No Way Home, albeit very small, but that coupled with already scratching the itch with The Amazing Spider-Man 1 could make the character stale. I think the point of the MCU is to give us things we've never seen before or fresh takes on things we're familiar with already, so new villains is a must. I think they were very smart in No Way Home to give us already established villains that we kind of grew up with. Honestly, we don't know how much time Tom Holland has left with Spider-Man or anything really. We don't know what could happen to these actors or what could happen in the world, so honestly I think it was a great opportunity in No Way Home to put all those different characters from Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery in there so that he'll at least have a chance to have met them. So that's why I'm not really sweating too much about Oscorp or Norman Osborn for Tom Holland's Spider-Man series, because we got a version of them and arguably we got some of the best versions that we'll ever see. Not to say that we shouldn't ever get another version. I want somebody else to play the Green Goblin eventually. I just don't know if that's 100% necessary for Tom's iteration in the foreseeable future. Maybe if we get a 3rd trilogy, then definitely get back to basics, but for now I think this is very smart. The main villains for this movie will be a more realized version of the Shocker in full suit, the Rhino, but the Rhino done actually well, Felicia Hardy aka Black Cat, and of course the Scorpion. Okay, I've been waiting for Michael Mondo to get his revenge since 2017, of course with J. Jonah Jameson being a background antagonist, with Kingpin also in the mix, obviously being responsible for Scorpion's condition, and Matt Gargan wanting revenge on Spider-Man, and with everyone forgetting Peter Parker, I'm sure that hatred of Spider-Man remains strong with Mr. Gargan, going to any lengths to get even with the web slinger who put him in jail all the way back in Homecoming. My idea is that during Spider-Man 4, there's a secret bounty put on Spider-Man's head by either J. Jonah Jameson or the criminal underworld, so this coaxes a lot of desperate villains to come out and try to end Spider-Man's life. I'm guessing they tempt Gargan with early release or parole for being involved with special experiments and augmentations to take down Spider-Man, leading to him becoming the Scorpion, but his plans are more lethal of course, not so much bringing Spider-Man back alive like J. Jonah Jameson would want. This would contrast J. Jonah from Kingpin as an antagonist from a true villain like Kingpin is, because as much as JJJ is a prick, I think he wants to see justice for Spider-Man's actions and not just have him killed. Rhino will be the first one up in a realistic Rhino suit just like the comics, and my fan cast for Rhino, since they totally dropped the ball by not casting him as Kraven but Steve Howie as Alexei Sistovich. He's a big behemoth of a man and a hell of an actor. I personally loved him when I used to watch Shameless. I would want Alexei to be kind of Sandman-esque, where he'll be that sympathetic villain and doesn't really want to be doing any of this, but is doing his nefarious deeds as a means to an end to support his loved ones. Felicia Hardy will be there to partake in some cat burglary and be Peter's fling, trying to get over MJ. Nothing too serious of course, and she's also going to be used as a way for Peter to not fully commit to Gwen, although he really wants to. And the casting for Black Cat, if not Anne Joy Taylor, would be Sydney Sweeney, and you know why, players. From everything that I know about Black Cat, I think she would do very nicely, and I think having Rhino be that sympathetic villain will contrast between him and Mac very nicely, since Mac is pretty deranged and sinister. He'll be the main villain and he actually enjoys the power he's gotten, and he'll have help from the Shocker, and that will be the gist of the story. As far as visuals, I would want to see more spectacular things, like obviously we need something to beat the Amazing Spider-Man 2 opening swing. Mainly all of the Amazing Spider-Man 2's visuals. The end of No Way Home could have potentially contended with that swing, but we got so little of it. So more dynamic swinging scenes. I'm not sure if that final suit has raised webbing, but it looked great in motion so far, and that coupled with the more reflective and traditional suit will lend itself to better VFX in the future. I'd like to see more practical webbing shots or little, moments like from the Raimi movies and the Amazing Spider-Man, and in this damage control scene from Homecoming. I think it just makes all the fantastical stuff feel even more real. I'd also love to see Tom do something cool like this from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 with the webs. I would just overall want to see more creative uses of the webs in the movies. I want Tom to really exude a sense of like, I got this, kind of next level confidence. Through Tom's progression through the movies, we've seen his confidence as Spider-Man build, but especially after everything he's experienced, he should be handling street level thugs, even the super powered ones, with ease. I think Andrew's Spider-Man really had that, scratch that, has that, this sense of I've got everything under control here, and I think with all of Tom's experience, it would make sense for him to carry himself that way. He will be standoffish to Harry and Gwen, but will open up a bit when he finds that Harry Osborn lost his mother. It kind of bonds with Harry over that. Of course, Gwen likes Peter, so she'll constantly invite him and constantly give him second chances after all the, dips and excuses he'll make. In the third act, I see Peter finally getting the symbiote suit and using it to defeat Scorpion and leaving him pretty badly injured after he almost kills Gwen Stacy and in a coma actually after he finds out his secret identity. I picture Peter moving in with Harry just like in the comics, and this will help alleviate some of Peter's financial worries, but also throughout the movie, I'd like for there to be subtle references of Harry dating models and actresses and talking to one more in particular, and Peter finds out it is none other than MJ, his MJ, and so this tears him apart and drives him closer to Gwen. MJ, maybe she'll take a turn when she hits college to modeling or acting or something. People change when they get to college, trust me. I'll get a little bit more comic accurate there. He will have some help from Daredevil since we got that scene in No Way Home. It's very important we see Daredevil and Spidey team up on the big screen, hopefully in a show as well. I definitely want to see a scene of Peter getting poisoned by Scorpion's tail, seeing all his fears come to life again, similar to Spider-Man PS4. That would just be such a killer sequence to see in live action. The suit we got at the end of No Way Home will remain the main suit and will not be changed, only for minor upgrades, and Peter will only don other suits on special occasions if his main suit needs to be repaired or for big team up event movies. So after he sees what he did to Matt Gargan, he takes it off but keeps it contained and possibly even takes it to Reed Richards too. Personally, I don't see how we're getting a Fantastic Four movie directed by John Watts and not having a Spider-Man cameo. It just makes absolutely no sense. I could definitely see a live action bombastic Bagman suit and a future Foundation suit down the road for an eventual team up movie. Hopefully Johnny Storm doesn't have to die though. He'll have more appearances in the team up movies or big event movies, and I can't think of a better one than the Multiverse of Madness, okay guys? Supposedly Toby was going to be in it. That's pure rumors, so take that with a huge grain of salt. I also believe Deadpool is as well. That's where Marvel is going to get truly crazy, guys, so I don't see why anything is out of the realm of possibility. Of course, whenever the next Avengers / team up movie comes, he'll be on that for sure. I'm crossing my fingers for a Secret Wars movie. Next, now that the new deal with Sony has been struck, something so unlikely has happened, which is a Spider-Man Disney Plus show being greenlit, okay? I mean, since then, we got Spidey in the Zombies episode of What If, but we still haven't gotten any of these Spider-Man movies on Disney Plus. Maybe someday soon though, but that tells me that for this new deal, they went all in with Marvel Studios and they're now able to use Spider-Man a lot more freely, and so a season of Spider-Man, a live action show, wouldn't be entirely out of the question unless they stick to canon animation, but in this case, we're picturing live action. I know that Marvel and Disney own the TV rights, but this is like actual MCU Spider-Man. All very confusing actually, so I won't even try to explain myself, but hopefully Tom Holland gets enough rest in between movies so that he can continue to do all this work for our enjoyment. This is to get more of Spider-Man's street level low-key villains and crime bosses in. That means more time for Kingpin. Maybe we get to see Tombstone in live action, possibly Hammerhead. I'd enjoy seeing the Enforcers or even the Prowler in live action, paying off his part in Homecoming, saving the really big stuff for the movies, whereas the show would have similar stakes to Homecoming, low street level problems for the street level part of the MCU. Get to see more of Peter's everyday life with college work and clearing the street level crime in New York. We could also use this as a place for street level meetups and cameos. Daredevil can always pop up, maybe Punisher or Moon Knight. Hell, let's get Ghost Rider in there or She-Hulk. Lots of fun and adventures and stories can arise from a TV format. Maybe call it Web of Spider-Man? I don't know. I personally would love that. Now, for the next two installments of the trilogy that I'll mention, I'll be even more scatterbrained and less structured than the jumbled mess I just gave you all for Spider-Man 4, since that's honestly the easiest to make, since the next two movies could go in any different direction. The MCU has a lot more freedom with Spider-Man now, but to what extent, I still don't know. The game universe is thriving and telling amazing stories, but I don't know if using any of those characters they're currently using will impede on the movie's freshness. Also, Sony's Spider-Man universe is a total wildcard, so I don't know what exactly their plans are for MCU Spider-Mans. It seems they might use Andrew's Spider-Man for their universe and keep Tom in the MCU strictly. People loved Andrew in No Way Home, and there's speculations the delay for Morbius might be to add Spider-Man in. Again, I'm not too sure if that's even possible at this point, but just throwing it out there, a grain of salt, guys. I personally think Andrew's universe should be treated like the Ultimate Universe though, Usher and Miles there, but that's for another video. We also have to take into consideration how much more Spider-Man Tom Holland has to give. He might be exhausted after this next one, who knows? So time will tell, but this is just what I'd ultimately like to see if we're getting at most 6 solo movies, which we are so spoiled that I'm even uttering that. Spider-Man 5 ideally would have Peter going up against the Lizard, the MCU version of the Lizard, having to contend with the likes of Felicia Hardy, aka Black Cat, and Kraven the Hunter, okay? The gist of this story would be basically Peter finally fully committing to Gwen, although still being deeply worried for her, and having heard about what happened to Andrew's Gwen in No Way Home, he's doing his all to keep her safe. At this point, Black Cat knows his secret identity, but hasn't told anyone else, but is seriously jealous and is acting out her scorn a bit. And Doc Connors will have a son in this universe. His wife has passed away after an event that he couldn't stop because of his disability, so rather than being a kind of vain pursuit, Connors is content with his loss of limb up until it caused that tragedy for not only him but his son, and gets cracking on a serum to make him whole again, and he ends up turning himself into the Lizard. He still has his senses about him during his first outing when he first mutates himself for the most part, but goes into the city in a confused state and starts a bit of a ruckus and scares some people. Peter chooses to deal with this disturbance rather than stopping a heist by Black Cat. Peter recognizes that the creature is Doc Connors, having been kinda half mutated into the Lizard at this point. Pete decides to recreate the formula that Andrew Spidey made for his Doc Connors, as this Doc Connors helps, and it's a success. Peter lectures Connors not to try such a dangerous experiment again. Kraven enters the picture around minute 45 to maybe like the 1 hour mark, and because of the uptick of animal-like superpowered individuals showing up in New York, he is intent on hunting and killing the Lizard. Meanwhile, he displays rather cruelly his skills by apprehending the Rhino and makes a clear message that he's coming after that Lizard beast next. So he catches Peter's radar. Good thing the Lizard's gone, right? Wrong. Obviously, in an attempt to remain whole again, Doc Connors secretly altered the formula unbeknownst so that his regeneration would kick in slower, because he is adamant about being whole again and never having anything like that happen again. And this leaves Peter feeling insanely guilty when he sees the Lizard return in the final act, extremely feral, okay? Very similar to the Shed storyline in Amazing Spider-Man 630 to 633, and is a danger to himself and others, but more importantly to his son. I want the Lizard to not be very sound-minded. I don't want him to be an intellectual. I want him to be kind of like a werewolf kind of transformation. All mammalian senses are just out the window and he's full reptile. So he has to keep Connors at bay until he can make a new cure, but has to make sure not to hurt him while also keeping him safe from Kraven, who is intent on killing him. Peter gets his suit ripped to shreds and has to use the black suit again on pure necessity, and ultimately fights Kraven and is forced to kill him after he tries killing the Lizard and his son. So this is when Peter quits the suit cold turkey, but I kind of picture Kraven killing Gwen Stacy with the shotgun. We gotta get out of the staleness of Gwen Stacy falling, snapping her neck. Again, guys, you know, I think after a while of seeing this lady's neck get snapped, it would get a little bit stale, honestly. So we gotta try and make things new. The symbiote finds its way to Matt Gargan at the end of the movie, and he is set up to become the MCU's Venom and awakens from his coma. And so as scatterbrained as that was, guys, for Spider-Man 6, okay, that's when we get to Spider-Man 6, which will culminate in Peter finally graduating from college and going up against Matt Gargan, returning as Venom, like he was in the comics, where he was very much a fucking problem, okay? Who will be torturing him throughout the whole movie? We already have an Eddie Brock, albeit not one that I prefer, and we had one from 2007, so I'd like to see another take on the character for live action. I kind of want to take some inspiration from Kraven's Last Hunt and Dark Avengers here. I think Matt Gargan is perfect since he was there since the beginning in Homecoming. For him to be the villain at the very end, I think is honestly kind of poetic, kind of nice. In Dark Reign, Mac was pretending to be Black Suit Spider-Man for the Dark Avengers, which I absolutely love that book. Mike Deodato is such a beast, and to have Matt Gargan running around as Spider-Man in the black suit, not necessarily Venom out yet, save that beastly reveal to the end, because he's an absolute beast when he's in that Venom form, and he might use his new form to strong arm some older villains like Mysterio and possibly Vulture to aid in tormenting him until they finally kill him, similar to Kraven's Last Hunt in that way, and he buries Peter only for him to rise back. Yes, this last installment is very half-baked, and honestly, with Feast being teased in No Way Home, I feel like Mr. Negative might get his live-action debut soon, although I feel like that's so close to what we saw with Spider-Man PS4, but who knows exactly, guys. This is all as good as a wild guess, and I'm kind of just doing my best trying to get one video out per week without exhausting myself, so hopefully that was enough to satisfy you guys. I would have loved to included Harry Osborn becoming Hobgoblin and having Oscorp and Norman Osborn in the background as probably Iron Patriot, because guys, we've already gotten to see Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. We have that itch scratched for the MCU. We would have liked to have had Norman Osborn from the beginning, or at least built up from the beginning. That's just not the way this shit goes, okay? We had legalities to deal with, we had all sorts of shit to deal with, so I'm not sweating it at all. I think it's very imperative for MCU Spider-Man to make things fresh, to take us in different directions while still honoring the source material, but doing it in a new and fresh way, because certain things, if you keep on doing them over and over again in the same way, it gets predictable and it gets stale. We have to make the stories different. It just is what it is. Now, finally, before we go, we have to talk about who should direct the next Spider-Man trilogy. The director is a huge part in the filmmaking process and how that script will translate to the big screen. They've got to make things that have only worked on paper work in a real life setting. So the task is immense. I think Jon Watts was great, and before No Way Home, I would have wanted to see a fresh take for another director for this new trilogy, but after No Way Home, all I want for him to do is stay on for 3 more movies, but he's of course got his hands full with the Fantastic Four. So to make this quick, I'll go up the list with the first director being Matthew Vaughn. You know him from Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, and The Kingsman. He's familiar with comic book movies, and his action style would be fun as hell to see with Spider-Man. Number 2 would be the already prevalent Edgar Wright. Okay, I'm in the Edgar Wright camp with him almost helming Ant-Man. I'd love to see what he could bring to the MCU given a full project to work on like Spider-Man. Him being no stranger to comic book movies himself, what with Scott Pilgrim, and his visual style would also be a treat to see. I believe he's expressed interest in directing Spider-Man before, so it just all fits. Now, my first choice for the director to helm this new trilogy is a bit unorthodox, but I would love to see Alfonso Cuarón. This is the man who directed Harry Potter and The Prisoner of Azkaban, so the visual change from the Homecoming trilogy to the College trilogy would be as distinct as Prisoner of Azkaban was for the Harry Potter series. Such a change in visual maturity. Things will be getting darker, and I think Cuarón is perfect to capture that for this series. How he made Harry feel so alone and isolated in Prisoner of Azkaban is something I think he could translate for Peter in these upcoming movies, especially with everything that he's just gone through. I'd really love to see what he could do with Peter Parker. Hopefully he's as visually unrestrained as James Gunn has been. So that's my rough idea on how the MCU Spider-Man's next trilogy should go. Please feel free to leave me your thoughts on what the College trilogy should be, the villains you'd want to show up, how you'd want things to go, the sequence of events, the villains, everything, suits you'd like to see, and storylines you'd hope they would adapt. I'm all ears, guys. Very interested in hearing what you guys have to say. That's it. If you like the video, leave me a thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want, subscribe. I always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.